So critical thinking is going to be crucial to what we're talking about, and having 21st century technology available to us is going to make it much easier for us to use that critical thinking skill with our students in our classrooms. As a government teacher for 12th grade in California, there are state standards that I am supposed to be following. The historical thinking standards are cross-curriculum. I know that a lot of times when we are talking about the state standards for history, we forget about the fact that science also requires this, as well as English and math. And these are the things that we need to be doing. Specifically for history thinking, we need to be sourcing our information, contextualizing our information, and corroborating our information. And as you're going to see, a lot of these skills with critical thinking are going to be applicable to other sources as well. Sourcing is probably the first thing that we need to teach our students, to look at the origins of whatever the source is that we're looking at. We need to understand the significance of what we are reading. We need to confirm that the information that we're getting is accurate. And we need to look at the credible source. And again, this is going to go back to English. It's going to go back to science. It's not just history that needs to be doing this, but it's especially crucial for us. Sometimes we forget that there was not a lot of opportunity to see everything, especially as we look at government and politics. And that the more that we can see all of the pieces, the more that we gather the information we need to make sure that we're reading accurate information, the better off our students are going to be. Contextualizing for me is one of my favorite ones to work with my students. I know that they need to look at the reasoning of the issues we're studying, whether there was another event occurring before or after, whether there were specific ideologies that were in play. And you can look at our current news items and see a lot of the static that is going on as a result of not understanding that historical contextualization. If we don't put the words in the media that we're looking at intertwined in their context, we're going to miss out on key pieces. And I use this picture as a really good example. Obviously, we know that before the civil rights movement, we have these Jim Crow laws that are going to create white waiting rooms and separate out our Black and our white Americans. But I think it's very crucial to notice that this particular bus is going to Little Rock, and knowing ahead of time that is going to be one of those crucial areas that's going to see change as we go through the civil rights movement. Corroborating is finding supporting evidence, and we want to make sure that they're doing that as they're looking to create their views and their opinions, especially in the government area. If we can find evidence from multiple accounts, if we can look at different perspectives and confirm that the information we have is accurate, then they create a stronger argument, whether it's for or against whatever they're arguing. I think this one came to my awareness a little bit earlier than some of the others. I'm familiar with the Onion News Network, and I had a student that turned in an article from the Onion News Network saying that child labor in the Industrial Revolution was a good thing for the students, for the children. And in talking with the student and asking her what had happened, how had she missed that, because it went against what we studied in class, she had just assumed that because it was written in print in a newspaper format, that it was accurate. And so I want to make sure that we are teaching our students, especially as I'm teaching a government class, that I want them to corroborate their information, that they need to find other events or accounts or information that backs up what they're saying to give themselves that stronger argument. So in particular, I want to point out how technology is going to fit in here. We're used to seeing books as our source of information, but when computers became available for our classrooms, our students now have access to up-to-date information, things that are not 20 or 25 years old, like my textbooks. And if we teach them how to research for the appropriate information, they are going to have access to way more than what we would ever give them credit for otherwise. When we teach them to check their sources, whether it's using Wikipedia as it's not bad, but then they need to find the original sources that are obviously available at the bottom of every Wikipedia page, contextualizing them, making sure that they match up with the other information. When we teach them to do that, they're going to have a better use of their critical thinking skills. They will have access to more information, and by teaching them how to think about it, they're going to be able to use that in a stronger way. I also see the personal devices in the classroom as a way to teach students that they have a tool with them virtually all the time that they can use for critical thinking. And so we're going to go ahead and use these smartphones as a way for them to identify information when they are reading about it, when they're having a discussion with a family or friend. They can use that with those critical thinking skills that we talked about to check sources, check the information, find corroborating evidence, and allows them to see their phone or their tablet as a tool rather than just something for Instagram and Snapchat. These are some of the additional ways that I've used devices or technology to create critical thinking skills in my classroom. The QR code that you see is a link to an evaluation form that my students fill out after every group project, and it gets them looking at what are they doing with their group that's working or not working. And having it as a QR code makes the form easy to read. It gets it where they are easily able to access that information with each other, and definitely makes them stop and think about every activity they're doing. You'll also see my students involved with an interactive classroom chat with a business member. We did that using Google Hangout, and again, they had to use critical thinking skills to come up with the questions they needed to ask that were going to best support their information, and we couldn't have done that without our new 21st century technology. Obviously, I'm part of Google Classroom, but I've also used Remind and Twitter to keep students organized, to keep them thinking. When I'm not with them, I still have access to supporting that information for them. And then my favorite one is the one you see on the right. This is a gummy bears activity. A lot of government teachers may recognize it. And the activity itself does not require any technology. They can use their textbook, and they use the gummy bears, and they write out the definition and give us an example. But for me, this is one of my favorite examples of technology because I did this activity with a substitute in my room. And I was able to have the students do the activity with the substitute's guidance, send me the pictures on Remind, or could have done it with Google Classroom, and I'm able to interact with them while I'm not even there. So we're having a conversation. Here's what a great one looks like. Here's what we're going to do to evaluate our tools. Are you thinking about what you were doing when you created this? Does it give the right definition? The ability to interact and to communicate is not one of the critical thinking skills that we listed in the history skills, but it's obviously so important for our students to access that.